one of the most often repeated phrases that I see in Christian discussion circles, whether that's like a Facebook discussion group or if that's actually in small groups at my local church or whatever, most often repeated, most common, and yet also at the same time the least helpful is the phrase, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. This is what people will often say, that, oh, you're just supposed to have a relationship with Jesus, and that you're not supposed to have religion. You're not supposed to be religious. And they will cite things like how religion has supposedly started a whole bunch of wars, that religion has divided people from their brothers and fathers and generations, etc. And how that's not the way we're supposed to be. We're just supposed to be these passive, compliant, amorphous relationers to the person of Jesus. And that it doesn't, what it amounts to is that person is saying that you're supposed to claim Christ without being committed to him. They often don't realize that's what they're saying. But what they're saying is, I want to be associated with Christ, but I don't want to be accountable to him. I want the pleasures of Christ, but I don't want the responsibilities of Christ. And if you call them on that, they're going to deny it because of the fact that they don't realize that that is what they are doing and that is what they are saying. They are essentially saying that they want to date, they want to be friends with benefits with Jesus, but they don't want to be a beloved and behooven spouse to Jesus, which it sounds weird when you say it like that, on account of how few times, how infrequent it is to discuss it, the fact that in Scripture, one of the primary metaphors for the relationship between God and man, between Christ and the church, is between a man and a woman, marriage. That the illustration of a man and woman in marriage actually exists exclusively to mimic or to imitate this relationship that we are supposed to have with Christ, that he makes demands and that the church makes supplications, that the man Christ loves and sacrifices for, gives himself up for, and leads and guides and protects his bride, the church, and that the church submits to, hears the voice of, listens to, follows, and respects the man Christ. That's how it's supposed to be, and that's how it's also supposed to be in marriage, and that's also how we are supposed to be individualistically to Christ, that when he demands, we supplicate, that when he commands, we obey, that when he speaks, we listen. The only way that that is possible is through religious restrictions and through religious commendations. What does that mean? That in a similar way, that like one of the biggest things in a relationship, whether it's a man and woman, or if it's just two friends, or if it's just two coworkers, or whatever, one of the biggest things in relationship that occurs, that ends up churning up the most conflict in that relationship, is their unspoken expectations. A person has an unspoken, undeclared religious guardrail for their relationship that they have not informed the other person about, and that in the process of that person transgressing that boundary, it ends up becoming visible to both. One didn't realize it was there, stepping on it as if it were a landmine. The other one, knowing it was there, permitted or permissively allowed that other person to transgress it, maybe multiple times in the past, and now wants to try to enforce that thing. And this goes with time obligations, schedule obligations, regarding attention and affection. An example of this is how in a lot of relationships, married relationships, a aspect of resentment can seep in between two spouses over the level of attention given to children. This is especially poignant in the matter of blended families, step families, in which each spouse brought their own set of children into the relationship. Maybe they're older or younger, and the spouses end up beginning to unknowingly begin to harbor resentment towards the person they married over the kind of relationship that that person has with their children, or with the other person's children, or with the external, let's say, ex-spouses or ex-parents in that situation. That they become resentful, they could become jealous, they could become disquieted as a result of the exchanges that occur, schedule-wise, time-wise, financially obligative, and so forth. Because it creates a manner of transgression that, if it goes unspoken after the fact, it only ends up getting worse and worse and worse, and often it will result in a fracture of that relationship. So, what does all this mean? That you cannot have a relationship with Christ without it being religious in nature. That when he sets certain guardrails of behavior in place throughout Scripture, you can't just say, oh, I'm doing this because I'm not religious like that. And that when he says that you must do certain things, that he compels certain kinds of behavior as well, you can't restrain yourself from doing those things or give yourself an excuse to not do those things because, oh, I just have a relationship. We're not really religious like that. And this could be in the realm of that, oh, I don't read my Bible because I'm not religious, which is a thing that I've heard. I don't pray on a regular basis because I'm not really religious. I just have a relationship with Jesus. Or I don't witness to others because I'm not one of those kind of religious fanatics. I don't give to the church because we're not really religious like that. And various other things in that direction. Alternatively, you can't just say, well, yeah, I'm sleeping with my girlfriend, we're living together, but we're not really religious like that anyway. We just have a relationship with Jesus. We go to church on Sunday. That's really all it is. Or you say, well, I steal time, or I steal actual assets or money from my employer, and I know that is strictly condemned in Scripture, but I still go to church because I have a relationship with Jesus, but I'm not really religious like that. Or another example is, I don't go to church. I don't go to church on Sundays, maybe Christmas and Easter in a celebratory fashion, but I don't go to church on a regular basis because I don't really have a religion. I'm not religious like that. I just have a relationship with Jesus. Like, these things are clearly antithetical to one another, all of them. But for some reason, we massage ourselves into a level of ignorance about them. We massage ourselves into a level of complacency about them, in which we stop recognizing, for some reason, that without those religious aspects, there is no relationship. At best, all you can say is that you are a spiritual adulterer with Christ. That you have multiple gods that you are trying to worship, even though Jesus said specifically that you cannot have two masters.